Hello everyone, Pulse here, and welcome to yet another episode of Delving Deep ESO. Now in today's episode, we will be discussing everything about the gameplay we've seen at QuakeCon 2013. And as always, I will be throwing out my own opinions and my own thoughts on some of the things that we saw, and some of the things that I believe to be first showings, and some of the things that we learned about those. Now before we begin, I do want to say, if you want to see the full video with the Pulse Age commentary, and really all of that on-stage nonsense, do click the video annotation. It should be in one of the corners, probably the top left, and you'll be taken there straight away so you can see the full video. You can either watch that before this discussion or after. It shouldn't matter too much, to be honest, but let's just dive right into what we were actually shown in terms of content for this demonstration. Now, Zenimax opted to start off with the character creation as you would expect, but I'm very happy to say that it was incredibly brief, and in the back of my mind I have to wonder if my ranting on the subject of character creation in one of my previous videos, which I do believe was the leaked footage discussion video, I wonder if that ranting somehow got to Zenimax, and they pretty much did exactly as I said. They decided to keep it short and sweet, and really get to the stuff, the content that we actually care about, and what we really wanted to see during the demonstration. And that's just kind of a funny coincidental thing, I feel, but it's always nice to have that in the back of your head, that maybe they actually saw your content. Now before moving on to actually the meat of it all, I will say that the character creation looks as robust as ever here, and the UI looks a good bit cleaner as well for the character creation or character select screen. Now the character creation at this point, I do want to say, is probably at its peak. I don't really foresee too much more being added here, because I feel like they're at the point where if they add too much more, they'll cross that line from tons of customization in the hands of the player, and they'll get to the point where characters will be made with enormous heads and tiny bodies, or huge fat arms and tiny chicken legs. Any of that very unrealistic stuff you see, it's actually typical in Asian MMOs. I really feel like it's at its peak now. What we get will be what we've seen so far, which is incredibly robust, as I mentioned, but it's at that point I feel like they shouldn't add any more. I just wanted to mention that the character creation's at that point of nearly perfect, in my opinion. Now let's go right onto the field of battle. Right off the bat, Zenimax pulls out the big guns after loading in, and they show us not only first-person view, but they show off first-person view with a bow, which, as many know, and I've mentioned a lot of times prior in my videos, it's by far the most popular way to play Elder Scrolls, especially since Skyrim's release, which pulled in a lot of more casual players that haven't really played Elder Scrolls prior. It really brought them into the game, and for whatever reason, a lot of players, me included, really gravitate towards that long-ranged bow style, where you can really just fire off precision and shots and that sort of thing. It's just really engaging, and it's a lot of fun, and in this context, it looks great as well, and you really get that sense of Elder Scrolls when the player is looking around and exploring the first area that he's dropped into. It all looks very engaging and immersive, and more importantly, it looks like it's a place to worthwhile exploration. It looks like it's a place that you could really drop into and find yourself wanting to look around the next corner, to dive into the crevices and what's over that hill over there. And I feel like Zenimax has done pretty well to convey that sense of the world having its own narrative, that the world is a character within itself, that you are not just on this place doing your own thing, that the world is actually contributing to the overall story that you're having within the game, which is obviously a part of what they've done with the previous Elder Scrolls games. So it's really nice to see that they've put sort of that same care into Elder Scrolls Online. Now let's just jump back to the bow. Sadly, it doesn't quite fit the bill for me. I'm sure it's fun to play, and it honestly looks like it will work fine in terms of delivering damage and letting you play the long-range style of combat, but the way the arrows seem to just disappear and there's really, even more importantly than that, there's this lack of impact, both from when the enemy is hit, but even more importantly than that is there's no sense of impact with the shooter firing. There's no sense that the character has actually done anything substantial to pull the string back and fire. There's no sense that you've really contributed at all to using that weapon, and it's a bit worrying, but I think at this point it's not so bad. It just needs some tweaking, mainly because what we see with the melee weapons, but I'll get into that in just a second. Now, it does need a bit of work, as I said, but for the first glance of the bow in action here, I'm actually quite content because it's not game breaking. It looks like it will get the job done in terms of letting you play the playstyle you want. You get to do the range damage, and it will fit that just fine. It's not incredibly immersive, it's not incredibly believable, but it will get the job done, and with a little polish I feel like it will get there just fine. Now the melee weapons, on the other hand, it looks a little bit more polished, and actually I want to say a lot more polished, and in my eyes the combat that we're shown with the dual wield in its current form could fairly easily stand toe-to-toe with the prior Elder Scrolls games and the combat experiences in any of those. The combat with the weapons, in the melee weapons, it's very fast-paced, and you see the character using a lot of skills interweaved with the weapon strikes, and you can see clearly using the power attacks and blocking and all of the things that we've been promised to see. They make sure to show it off here, and it's really exciting to see. In addition to that, we do see some weapon swapping, but before I get too much more into the combat, let me just say I guess we'll get into that a little bit later, because we are shown the first time group play, specifically dungeons, near the second half of the video. They jump right into that. So I'll get to more combat talks in that portion of the video. Now, the aforementioned combat that we are shown with the bow and the dual wield, we're given this reveal of mounts with a bit more exploration shown off, which includes not really the reveal, but showing off Mundus stones, and a little bit after that we are seeing some sky shards as well. Now, I want to talk about the mounts really quickly, because I've seen a ton of complaining about how the horse kind of appears under the player's feet out of thin air, not ear. And to those people, though, I want to ask you, and I have to assume they don't play MMOs a lot, so it's a legit question here. But if you want the ability to mount your steed anywhere, anytime, any place, and nearly any situation while you're out exploring the world, what would you prefer the mount to do instead of just randomly appearing under your feet? Because there's only a couple options in my mind here. I mean, would you prefer the escort of the creature all over Tamriel, which would by far be the most realistic? And honestly, I would fucking love that if the tech was there. I mean, would you prefer, instead of that, you get the whistle system, which some other games have done, which is total bullshit in my opinion. It doesn't actually give you any sense of realism either. The only difference is it makes you stand there and watch your character appear on the hill instead of the horse appearing under your feet, and then you have to wait for a slow ass to get to you. Would you like Pokeballs? Would you like a better lore explanation? Because you're not going to get that either. It just doesn't make sense. It's not there for the lore. It's there because it's a gameplay mechanic which needs to happen close to you, and it's not going to happen any other way. And I'm sorry for complaining kind of in this silly way, but I'm seeing the complaints about the mount appearing with quote-unquote solutions, people wanting, that will simply not happen. They simply will be wasting time. Literally, if you have the whistle system, it will literally be wasting your time as you stand there and wait. It will waste time for the developers to put in a system which is so frivolous and pointless. In addition to that, it will waste real estate by literally taking up more space in the world, and it will take up more real estate in the server as well. If the server has to keep track of everyone's mount that's on a leash, or any of the systems similar to that, there's so many problems that can come about with a system which has more realism here. I've seen some people want like a stable system where you can go and just hop on your horse like a single player game. And to them, I think they're crazier than even more than the Pokeball guys, because this is an MMO, guys. This is not a single player experience, and I've seen this a lot, even from like the really popular ESO channels and sites that are covering this game. They keep boasting this sort of sentence and this sort of structure saying that Elder Online is an Elder Scrolls game first and it's an MMO second, and to them I say pull your head out of your ass, because that's not what you're getting at all. If you think about how MMOs are designed, you cannot have an MMO come second place to anything else, otherwise your game is fundamentally flawed from the get-go. If you do not have the systems in place that make an MMO work, specifically with how it works online, which is the whole point of an MMO, multiplayer online, okay, if they don't have those systems in place first, Jesus Christ, what the hell was that? If they don't have those systems in place first, the game will not work at all. There's somebody like jumping up and down upstairs. That's lovely timing. But the whole point is that you have to really accept the fact that this is an MMO first. But that's not a bad thing, okay? I want people to stop associating MMO as a term and as a genre that is negative, and that's really become a popular thing to do with development and really the communities as well, which is terrible, because the idea of an MMO is fantastic, and the idea of pairing that sort of online experience with other genres is fantastic, which is what we're getting with Elder Scrolls Online. We're getting a substantial RPG in the form of Elder Scrolls, having a lovely child with the MMO. And just because the Elder Scrolls part isn't quite balanced or sort of overshadowing the MMO part, it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just not. We really need to get past this assumption that the MMO is bad. But I'm done with the mount thing. That really kind of stirred a little rant in me, and apparently upset my neighbors as well. But beyond the mount thing, we have the Mundus Stones and Sky Shards, as I slightly mentioned, and they pretty much work as we'd expect based on what we've been told thus far. The only thing I do want to mention though is Paul Sage and his word choice when he was talking about the Mundus Stone that was shown. He said something along the lines that made me think that it was more long duration temporary buffs, but I do believe prior interviews and information have sort of swayed them towards more of a permanent thing. So I'm not 100% sure on that, but I did want to mention it, that Mundus Stones are not a permanent buff anymore. They will be a temporary thing that we can utilize strategically, but they won't be something that we can just pick up and forget. Sky Shards, on the other hand, are pick up and forget. They will be hidden around the world just as we expected. You pick up 3, they give you a skill point, and then you can issue a skill point to your skill lines. You can use them to morph skills, and I'm sure a number of other things depending on what they decide to do with excess skill points. But those things pretty much work as we would expect. Now, beyond this point with the mounts and the Mundus Stones and Sky Shards and stuff, we are moved towards the group combat. But before I get to that, I do want to mention a couple things. First, the UI is much cleaner here with just the character screen and the skill line screen and those things. They look very well done and much more polished than previous. The map, on the other hand, is not even close to finished, but I'm not even going to mention it because it's just a map. It's not really important. Now, we see the sort of skill line system in place, and we see him use a morph skill, and he does make sure to scroll over the tooltips here, and the ones that are shown are pretty much an exact match of the leaked info we've seen prior, which means that we've pretty much as a fan base already seen and have access to the different skills, and we have a fair bit of knowledge about what we will be able to play with in the Elder Scrolls Online universe when it's launched. It's a little bit bittersweet, to be honest, and I hope they show more skills, but I like what we have seen already, and it really comes down to, since it was leaked so long ago, there's that urge to see more, because I've known about the skills for a long time, and I'm sure if you don't know already, just Google the skill line leaks. I'm sure you'll find them. They're not too well hidden, to be honest, but really what's going on here is that we've got a huge number of skills that we know about. We don't know about the Nightblade, and it's a bittersweet, as I said, but the the current pool of skills that we do know about is pretty substantial, and if we don't get any more by the end, I'll still be more than happy. I will be pretty ecstatic, to be honest, to jump into the skill lines that we already know about. But really beyond that, let's just go right into the gameplay, mainly the reveal of the group combat. And in addition to that, we also get the first look at the LFG system, which I do believe they've kind of mentioned under the table style, very shady, that there will be a looking for group system in the game. But I suppose I will start with the combat in the dungeon before I get to the LFG. I will probably finish with some LFG talks, because I definitely have some thoughts and discussion and some concerns about the LFG system that we may be getting. So let's get with the dungeon first, though. We are led right into the dungeon after a short teleportation to our group, which comes by the LFG, but I'll get into that later, as I said. And it would appear that our 4-man group has one of every class available, and this is the first substantial look that we've really been given of group play, and there are some interesting tidbits that I caught while watching it. Right off the bat with the combat, it looks very chaotic and fun, which for a low-level dungeon is just fine. I've seen some grumblings about the internet about how it doesn't look terribly in-depth, and they're absolutely right. This is meant to be an entry-level dungeon, after all, for new players to begin learning how to play in a group setting. Now, even with that said, however, there are some nice mechanics which are usually utilized in higher-level content when it comes to MMO PvE. One of the first things was the need to be self-aware with a debuff, which explodes after a timer, and so the idea is you have to be aware of when you have that debuff and run away from your group so that you don't wipe them or kill them all in one foul swoop. This is a commonly used mechanic in high-end dungeons and raiding environments, but it's nice to see that they've at least attempted to provide a sense of challenge and urgency to the combat, even in the lower level content. That's a nice little touch, because there's this kind of trend in MMOs where you do the 1-250 or 1-100 leveling, and then you finally get to learning the game, and you're a total scrub if you ran through the game. It makes it too easy. I'm glad to see that there's at least an attempt to make it challenging in the lower levels. Now, in addition to this, we do see very briefly, and there should be a screenshot up so you guys can actually see what I'm talking about. There's this conal effect, or in terms of what you see on the ground, a red triangle upon the ground, and it instantly reminded me of the WildStar system of letting players know of skills that are coming their way. And I actually hate the way that WildStar is doing it, because it just clutters the screen with the stuff. But in the footage of Elder Scrolls Online, we are shown this sort of system of letting you know what's going to happen very few times. I think I only counted 2 times, which is a relief, because when it's constant, like in WildStar, it really just kills the sense of immersion. It absolutely destroys any sense of realism there. Now, one more thing I did notice, which I haven't quite figured out yet what it is completely, and I should have a screenshot of that as well, which is frequently throughout the gameplay, you see the player have this press X for whatever spell, attack, or effect of some kind. And in this case, I do believe a screenshot of press X for impale. Now, considering there are multiple different effects that you see, I do remember seeing one that was like a poison effect or something like that. Because there are different effects attached to this like X hotkey ability that appears, my best guess for it is that it's potentially interactive items, or maybe even enemy-specific interactions. This is something that's been done before, so it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility, but it does show up quite a lot, and I couldn't quite pick out if there was any specifics for the enemies or if there were specific items. It was very hard to tell, but that's my best guess. Beyond these sort of interactions, though, with the conal effects and the debuffs and just the overall feel of combat and this new guy, the press X for whatever thing, we're also shown a multitude of skills and weapons and class abilities. With the bow in particular caught my eye with the AoE, which is typical of fantasy games, by doing a volley of arrows. But we also see the healing from the the resto staff keeping allies alive by shooting little beams of light. We see the Templar stabbing the hell out of some of these enemies with which, if you've seen the leaked footage, you would know that the Templar is playing under what would be like the Adric Spear skill line, with the light spear stabbing and throwing and those sorts of skills. But we also see the Sorcerer utilizing some teleportation abilities. With lightning speed, he has kind of this crackling, and he zooms around by teleporting with this skill. And it's all very exciting to see after so long of just this long drought of nothing from Elder Scrolls Online. And by the end of it all, it quite simply looks like a ton of fun, which to me is by far the most important part of playing a game. It's the enjoyment factor. That's what games are about. That's where they came from. So the fact that it does look so much fun, there's some obvious polish that needs to be done, some tweaking, obviously, and there will be balance going on long after the game comes out. The fact that it looks so much fun is pretty exciting, because I've been thus far excited about the skill line system and the innovations with that and the ability to make what you want to be in the world. But the fact that it does look so fun is really another kind of tick mark on my things that need to be done for this game to really be successful, especially for someone like me. Now, I'm going to shift gears here because I kind of ended on a high note there, but I'm going to get into a bit of a rant. I can feel it. Let's just jump right into the LFG tool, okay? Now, before I even get started, I do want to make this very clear, because there's quite a lot of arguments for both sides of the spectrum about an LFG tool. I do realize that LFG, or looking for group, has been mentioned before, and it's something that I should have expected. And I also do realize that it's become a staple in MMOs, especially since WoW integrated it a long time ago. Now, there is a massive issue with the way Zenimax seems to have implemented, and it could change. Obviously, there's months away. Paul Sage clearly states during this demonstration that you can just skip over the exploration and adventure and jump right to where your group or dungeon is, which nullifies a massive part of the game in my eyes. I'm completely and totally fine if they implemented a system which allows fellow group mates to sort of hasten your travel by allowing them to teleport you via like summoning stones or shrines or campfires or any of those sorts of systems, which essentially is like 2 or 3 members of your group go to one place, and if they've all made it there, they can maybe hasten up the slacker in the back. I mean, the problem is, if you have this instant travel thing, ask anyone that's played WoW, both with like played prior to and then after the LFG system was implemented, which allowed instant travel to the dungeons and their entrances. They pretty much construct this massive world with the idea of exploration, and they make it an important part of the experience, just as you would do for the standalone Elder Scrolls titles. And then Zenimax comes along and shits on their own feet by nullifying the very ideal with LFG in this format. At least there is one thing that kind of has me hopeful. It's that they didn't mention that they were going to put in a random grouping system, but at this point I wouldn't be surprised at all, especially with the way that Mega Server is going to be working, and the way that it could work and utilize a system very similar to what would be like cross-server grouping or cross-server LFG tools. The Mega Server kind of already bypasses what makes that really a good tool at all. It really bypasses the stuff that made it challenging. So now it's going to be easier. So I would really expect to see it, and I hope that. The real problem is that I do absolutely understand 100% what people this kind of system is for and what good it can do. So I do understand the opposite side of the spectrum. I do understand the opposing argument. But I mean, even for me, I'm in the very situation which an LFG tool helps me play, because my play time is scarce, and it lowers traveling time so you can get right into the action and enjoy the game. But you know what? Honestly, even with that, I will keep my exploration, and I will forge legitimate relationships with people I find out in the world. And that sense of community and friendship is what keeps the MMO and gives it longevity long after the initial release. And Zenimax is honestly making a huge mistake by emulating WoW with this. I mean, you can just look at their subscriber numbers since implementing that system, because instead of sticking to what made the game addictive in the first place, which was allowing you to meet people in your realm and kind of create your own friendships, which is really the biggest sort of holding point for an MMO. That's why it's very hard to quit an MMO if you have substantial time in there. I seriously fear for the longevity of ESO if this system copies what WoW and other competitors have done so heavily. I really don't want them to do this, and I really feel like it's an awful sort of scene playing in my head where we have this wonderfully constructed game in Elder Scrolls Online, and then everyone is congregated in one main city on your faction, tabbed out watching YouTube or listening to music with an LFG tool running in the background, and leaving the wonderfully sculpted world empty and completely unused. And I feel like that's the biggest downfall of an LFG, which allows you to teleport. If they had implemented a system where you can teleport with your group mates, like I said, the summoning stone system, or if they took their system of way shrines and made it so that there's always a way shrine directly by the dungeon entrance, so that if you've already found it you can go there, that's maybe even a better way. But having an LFG tool like this is just, it's a little bit too far in my opinion, and it could potentially kill the overall social aspects of it all, because there's always that argument that you can still make friends in a randomly sort of generated group that you've gained from an LFG tool, but that's just not the case. It's not the same as if you actually had to run there and meet. It gives you time to talk and conversate, and it just lets you become friends. That's really what it's about. It lets you become friends to these people, and then by the time you're in the dungeon, you've already kind of got this relationship going with a couple of the people in the group, and then from there, that allows you to have further social experiences with those people and with more people, because maybe you have one of those friends from that group come along with you, and you go into a dungeon again and you pick up more friends, and maybe you and your buddies helped summon another guy, and that guy's really thankful for the fact that you helped him get there a little bit quicker. It's just, they're taking away the overall exploration and social aspects that come from needing to actually explore the game. When you remove that, even if it's the majority of the people have already explored it and the minority is getting teleported, the problem is that's still a huge chunk of players, and it can really kill the social experience when it comes to the dungeon PvE. But well guys, I'll just end there, because I could just go on and go in circles talking about the LFG system, and really that's all there is to the overview and discussion of the QuakeCon footage. There is some more I can potentially talk about with this footage, mainly because I can add it to the library of the other ESO content we have seen, and maybe grab some things that we've heard previously and apply it to something I didn't notice in this footage. And that's pretty exciting. I'll have to take a look and see what I can do with that. But guys, this will be it for me. This has been Pulse, and I really want to thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. Make sure to check out the Delving Deep ESO playlist, and stick to the Nova Pulse Gaming channel for everything Elder Scrolls Online and the gaming world as a whole. Thanks again, and I will see you next time. See ya.